So I've lived in three different continents, and in those places we've lived, in all three of them, as I'm contemplating it now, have had significant crises while we were living there. I want to kind of go through those a little bit, and maybe that will help give a little context to some of the things that we who are active out in the field face on a regular basis, actually, and give a little different view of things. So I know most of my friends and family that have written with concern saying, hey, you guys need to leave. Love your care and concern. I hope that what I just have to share will maybe be a little bit helpful to help understanding. I was just out for a walk today. The city of Beirut's behind me, and the sun's in my eyes, so I can't see too clearly, but it's just over my right shoulder here. You can see that over there. And in 2020, we had the Beirut blast that blew up where all those cranes are. They blew up the really most of the city. And where I'm sat right now, if I was sat here, I would have felt that blast from there. It's about 6 miles as the crow flies. It blew out windows about 10 miles from Beirut, which is another 4 miles from where I'm at. Um, Even in our own place, it shattered the windows that actually the glass broke our dining table in half. And when that happened, I was like, well, that's three for three then, I guess. But it's just a part of the way the world is today, and where we're living is something that even I think back to 1994, we first moved to Liverpool, and while in Liverpool serving an organization there. And by the way, I have to be a little careful what I say, and I'm just going to kind of share and talk, and hopefully, if this is helpful, you think it's helpful, share it for us, spread the word. I've not said anything up till now. I was out walking and praying, and I just felt like I was supposed to say something. So just trusting that I'll say the right words to help the church around the world understand, and those people that connect with us, especially and care for us, understand why we are here, and the degree of importance. I can hear uh, drones. I can't see them. I can hear them way up. I can hear jets flying way up, but that's actually common here. Um, the the country who's engaged to the south of Lebanon here, and again, I'm careful of the words I use, but uh, they regularly fly over. There's been times where flying over the sea there, they let loose a missile from their aircraft as it flies over the top of our apartment and practically knocks us out of bed. That's happened one time where that happened, and many other times it's happened where they're firing. And this has been, for the 6 years or so we've lived here. This is a regular occurrence. So anyway, so going back to, we moved in 1996 October. We moved to Manchester, England from Liverpool. But before we moved in October, in June, we went over for a little scouting trip. We'd already arranged our apartment, and we went for a scouting trip. And I can't remember the exact date. I think it was June 15th, maybe. And as we were driving from Liverpool, we had a friend of ours that was over. We wanted to show him the city where we're going to be moving to and all that. And we couldn't get into the city center. We're like, what's going on? And we had delayed we were going to go early in the morning and make a full day out of it, but I decided, it's a day off. I'm going to clean the car. We kind of putted around. Our children were actually, Elizabeth wasn't born yet. Jonathan was just a baby. He'd only been born that June, so he's a tiny little baby. And it was June 3rd, actually, now that I think about it. He's only 2 weeks old. And so, we were a little slower than normal and expected, so we went a little later. And because of that, as we got close to Manchester, we found that we couldn't get close to the city center to park. And it was cordoned off. We hadn't heard the reason why and all that, but then it turned out that the IRA had blown a huge explosive in in Manchester city center. A giant blast. It just devastated the city center. Thankfully, they had made notice ahead of time, so lives weren't lost in it. but that was a pretty, during that time, the IRA, Northern Ireland and the UK and all that, there were regular bomb threats on expressways, motorways. If I remember right, it was July 7th when I was in London. I actually arrived there when the bus was blown up. I was literally like in 2 blocks away when that happened. And I don't even, I hardly ever went to London. I just happened to be there at that time for an event that I had to go to. And came out of the event, and all the police and everything was around, everything was cordoned off. So that was in the UK. Then we moved in 2009. We turned over our church in Manchester in 2008, moved to Nigeria in 2009. And that's when Boko Haram, who had been around for about 7 years by then, but they were pretty much limited to using machetes and things like that and doing horrible things that way. But Boko Haram started identifying with, other international terror groups, organizations, and learned how to do bombs and explosives. And, one thing led to another. And when was it? Let's see. We started the Bible College in 2010. And I think it was 2012 or 2013 when Boko Haram blew up the United Nations building. Our kids were in school. Our headquarters was about half a mile from that building, maybe 3/4 of a mile. My kids were in school with Julie, was working in the administrative office there during that time. Her job was to call around to all the parents who worked in the United Nations building to make sure they were, not that they hadn't died. There was 20 some people that died in that. So many testimonies from our students and other people of protection, God's protection. And over the years, those kind of things have happened on a regular, that's two completely different continents with these kind of things happening. There are regular threats, regular explosions. There were just the everyday challenges that you go through living in different um, contexts where there's tension between different organizations and different interests. But the point I want to share is we've had those experiences over the years, but in Manchester, there's a thriving church that has also seen other churches planted out of that church. And they're about ready to transition. We transitioned in '08 to Pastors Allen and Claire Morton. Since then, several churches have been planted, and they're about ready to transition in January over to Pastors Mark and Simone Walker, who have been the assistant pastors there, associate pastors there for a number of years. And the church has nothing. I mean, there's a church planting movement that's about ready to get going. The church, that's the churches we started, but the church in the UK has grown. And yes, there's imperfectness amongst the church and there's tremendous work to be done there. But the gospel has spread. I go to Nigeria where we had those tensions. If we would have left during that time, it literally, I remember I was in a church shortly after I arrived there, and I was in a small church, and it was in small church in Guagalada. I love saying that, Guagalada. And I was ministering in that small church, and there was a word of knowledge that came forth that I think it was in a week or two, that there would be a loss of life, and that was the next thing we knew. Boko Haram had killed about 150 Christians in the Plateau State in Jos, and that was kind of when things really started to kick off for Boko Haram in 2009 that week. So, but now, we went ahead. We started that Bible college in October 2010. And by the way, if you didn't hear, I'm doing this on my own page, but if you have not heard our Club 1040 Day recordings, I interviewed Pastor Tokes. Julie and I interviewed him, and we talk about the early days of the start of the Bible college there and what God's done since then. It's an incredible interview, and we interviewed people all day long, and that was about 10 days ago. And so anyway, you can hear more about that if you go to our Club 1040 page and look at those interviews, which are there and available, or to our YouTube page, Club 1040 YouTube page, and you can watch those interviews. So, but now We started with 80 students in October 2010. Now there's 6,000 some odd students. They're taking in a fresh. They just graduated 1,100 people, I think, and they're about ready to bring in another intake. I think they've had 1,900 applications. There's 11 Bible college campuses. Three are on university campuses, so they can do simultaneous university and Bible college at the same time. And that is just the beginning. So if we would have left in 2009 before the Bible college started because of the rise of Boko Haram, and or even more in 2013 when it was just getting started, or 2012 whenever the blast was for the United Nations building, um, I don't know if we would have seen all those leaders trained. If we would have said, no, we're not moving to Manchester because there was a blast there and blew up the city center. I don't know if we pioneered that church. I don't know if that church would have ever started. And if the many lives would have been positive influence over the years. Now, so many years later, we properly started it in 1997 is when we launched it, just a few months after that blast. And in the city center. And then, since we've been based, we moved from Nigeria, moved our main headquarters to here in Beirut, Lebanon. And of course, Lebanon's been in the news this whole time. And I do need to say, we have friends who are Palestinians. We have friends in this, family, literally, like, spiritual family, in both of these locations. And is there's we've lived in this place with these different organizations that are based here for these years. Our team is here, and for those that are concerned, we do due diligence. We have connections with the U.S. Embassy, with the British consulate, with German consulate, different ones, and we're listening constantly to the word and what's happening, and we'll follow those security threat statuses. um, you know, so we pay attention to that, and in addition to that, other things that other sources of information that we have from on the ground. But um, I think back, and I think if we would have never started the Church of Manchester because we left because of threats and because, I mean, genuine risk. If we would have never started or even continued in Nigeria because of genuine threats and risk, uh, would we have seen what we've seen over these years? I don't believe we would have. When we relocated here, Julie and I, before the Beirut blast, actually it was about a year before the Beirut blast, maybe even, we were like, you know what? They're like, it's been awfully peaceful here compared to the other places we've been. And like, it seems weirdly peaceful. We haven't had some big situation happen. And it was shortly after that that there was a drone that crashed into a office just the other side of just here in the city behind me in Beirut. And it was that drone was said to have been an intelligence drone from the country south of us here, and it crashed into an office of the main organization that's in the news in this country every day. So um, after that, it was like there was a week where the organization here was like contemplating what are they going to do, and everybody was tense because they're like, is their reprisal going to be one where it's going to be escalate to a war? And they did the right thing. They reprised by shooting missiles into an area where there were no possibility of casualties to the country south of us. And then there were missiles that were shot back and forth into areas where there was no casualties. And they have been doing that a number of times over the years. And then we're still like, well, even with that, there's tensions and things from time to time. And it seems fairly peaceful. And then the Beirut blast happened. And that was like, okay, so now we've lived in three different continents and there's been three major explosions. I don't think anybody wants us to move to live where they live. Now we've lived outside the USA longer than we've ever lived inside the USA. We've just finished, we're just started our 30th year living outside the borders of the USA. Love it. We love what we do. And we just saw um, 1 weekend ago, um, the Bible College launch here after 6 years. A year and a half ago, we launched the church in April, and there were 340 people there. approximately 280 of them completely unchurched, and a huge portion of them gave their lives to the Lord. And the church has continued, and it's strong. It's doing well, and we're planning for a second church launch in another location. That team has already begun working on the foundations of that. It's going to take some time to get the team together and do that, but that's going. Um, Meanwhile, the team has continued to build here. We use this place as a place to train people for the region. They have something called Go Beyond. It's for mission leader training. They can come and they can be trained for 2 years in real life context to feel what it feels, to feel the feelings of these kind of circumstances and to process those and to build those muscles in a fairly safe environment so that then as God leads, they can go from here to whatever part of the region that they're called to. We're targeting these 22 countries for, training leaders, strengthening the churches where we're at, and uh, um, and then also seeing church planting movements launch. Bible colleges started, and uh, that kind of thing started across all 22 nations by the year 2030. The Bible college launched with 90 students from 14 different churches in this city. And just that alone is a miracle. If you know the context, the churches in the city are pretty pretty focused on what they do. They don't always collaborate or cooperate all that much, and a lot of them are just trying to survive. And I understand it and I get it. But to have that number of churches representing the student body is amazing. That number of students is phenomenal, especially when you consider there's only about 5,000 evangelical believers in the country. There's probably about and by the way, go to our Club 1040 page, and we go through that. You can hear some of the firsthand accounts of some of our team. You can hear firsthand accounts of some of the students, pastors that are coming, and why they're coming, and what the context is, and how they, the challenges that they work with every single day. Um, and It'd be great if you go there, and if nothing else, go there, watch as much as you want to watch, and then share it for us to get the word out. People have asked, do we know of organizations? There's a lot of great organizations that you can support that work down in the country south of us here. But also know that, that area is one of our 22 countries. And um, as horrible as what's happening is happening now, I can see when the dust settles in years to come, there will be the possibility of a church in Gaza. Why not? Why not? Why can't that be? That would be an amazing thing. And Club 1040, Julie and I, everything we do, I would love to see that happen and be a part of that in some way. There are things we can't talk about that we are already operational on and already doing. And if you want to be a part, this is not a support raising thing. I'm not trying to use a crisis to get resources. I think that's horrible that people do that. But one of the best investments people have ever made in the places we've been is church planting. It changes places, long-term generational change, and that's what we're about is training leaders, which will strengthen the existing churches, but then also seeing church planting movements launch, because churches and more churches is what's needed to really see true change. In this country, Lebanon is incredibly important to God's end time plans and purposes. It's the only Christianized Arab nation in the Middle East, and one where people can change from one background to another freely, more or less freely. And so with all the challenges that have happened over the years here, with the crisis that started with ISIS in Syria and all the refugees that started coming in, and all the economic collapse and all the things that have happened, this country and the church in this country is extremely important to this region being what God needs this region to be. God's word prophesies and speaks out that Lebanon will be a fruitful field. And so we're here to help that be a part of that. And one of the number one things you can do as a believer is pray. The Bible talks about praying for all those that are in authority, for kings and all those in authority. Kings, you don't have to agree with them. They don't have to be believers to pray that they will make decisions, that God will surround them with people who will help counsel them to make the right decisions. Even evil kings can make good decisions with the right people speaking into their ears. and those kind of things that are necessary in order to maintain peace. And the scriptures go on and say why that's important, that we might live godly and peaceable lives in all peacefulness and honesty and joy and goodness, so that this gospel, which the Bible goes on to say that this is well pleasing in the sight of God. God wants us to have peace. He wants us to have peaceful environments. Why? Because He wishes that none perish, but all come to the knowledge of the truth. That's people from all sides and all backgrounds. And so, as you pray, some of you will see this maybe as you wake up in the morning in the U.S. Those of you in the U.K. and Africa and different places, you'll see it now. But as you're going to church and as you pray, make sure that you're praying in agreement with the Word of God and praying for that peace to reign so that the gospel continues. That Bible college that just started, we don't want to see it shut down because of war breaking out and causing things to have to stop. We've had to stop at different times because of the blast, because of the revolution that we had here. The church was delayed in being started for about 2 years because of first the revolution, then COVID, then the blast, all those things consecutively. But we continue to hold fast. We prevailed, and the church launched, and it launched strong, and it continues to go. And we're already looking at new church plants. So that's the way we roll. If you will join with us from a prayer standpoint, we would value that significantly. Spread the word for us. That helps immeasurably. And just know that when you watch the news and what you see, I'd say 70, even from very good news outlets that most of you watch, maybe 70%, even some of the Christian news outlets, 70%, sometimes less for the Christian outlets, is good and accurate. And there's a lot that people, there's a lot of sensationalism. There's a lot that people report that's not quite accurate. And then you'll see more and more of people have to come, and they don't do a very good job of this, but they have to take back what they've said. So anyway, just know that we're here. We continue to stand, and we're being wise, and also being attacked by flies. But in the end, I just want you to know that we appreciate all the care, concern, and that you're a big part of what's happening over here, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. God bless.